Woo-hoo. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Millennial Sales Podcast, episode 197. This is your host, Tom Alemo. They call me Tommy Tahoe. Appreciate you joining me on this journey to help young salespeople with their careers, become better salespeople, more fulfilled, make more money, all that good stuff, man. So appreciate you joining. God, one of the best episodes in the 3.5 years I've been doing this show today. One of my favorites, and I'm not BSing you. Before I get into that, let me give you a quick plug. If you like what I do with the podcast, with the blog, with anything else, I'd love if you head over to Apple and subscribe and leave a quick review. It'll take you 1 minute. It helps me grow the show. It helps me get better guests, helps me just do a better job for you. And that's really what I'm trying to do, is add value. Outside of that, you can find this show, Millennial Sales, wherever you listen to podcasts, on Apple or Spotify. You can find me on social media at YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram at Tommy Tahoe. Hit me up on LinkedIn as Tom Alemo. And I can't stress enough, I love hearing from you people. I love getting questions. I love getting feedback. I love getting comments. It fuels me. It fires me up. I'm doing all these episodes either, early in the morning, late in the evening. It's pitch black outside here in San Francisco on a Thursday night as I'm doing this, or it's on the weekend. So I really appreciate if you hit me up. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Love to hear what you thought of the show. If you share it out on social, tag me. If you share it with a friend, I'd really appreciate it. All of that stuff just gives me so much energy and so much joy. So I really do appreciate all the love that I've been getting the last few months on the show. Let's pivot to this week's episode. I'm telling you, you can hit me up on LinkedIn after the show and let me know if this was not one of your favorite episodes. If you've listened to this show for a while, Scott Barker. If you don't know Scott Barker, then you're probably not in SaaS sales. Then you probably haven't been in SaaS for a while, or sales for a while, or MarTech or sales tech. He's one of the guys. He's the head of strategic engagement at Outreach. He's an operating partner at the newly launched Go-to-Market Fund. He's the head of partnerships at Sales Hacker. But he also is involved with the Sales Engagement Podcast. He's involved with Revenue Collective. He's an advisor at several startups. He writes his own weekly newsletter, The Forecast, and the guy exhausts me with everything that he does because he puts so much out there. He's someone that I'm trying to model with the way that I'm building out my career as well. And so he tells some great stories about the early days of his career. It's a very interesting path of door-to-door sales at a young age. I think he was about 19 or 20 when he started. He got into some interesting kind of troubles with money and partying early in his life that he'll talk openly about. Then we talk about the job that he got at Sales Hacker that really changed the trajectory of his career and how he got that. He has an amazing story about halfway through. He talks about made this custom webinar to get on Max's radar to get the job. And it's a really interesting story. So for anyone that's interested to learn more about his past, to learn more about how to get a great job that can really change your career, about sales tech and where it's going and the future of it, about thinking better, about how to take in the right information when we're getting blindsided by content all day long, and how to filter that. Scott's just a great thinker. He's a great guy. I learned a lot from him in this conversation. I think you're going to learn a lot too. So without further ado, let me shut up and give you this episode with Scott Barker. Let's go. Scott Barker, coming at you from the early morning in Vancouver. You can see it's pitch black out there. How you doing, man?
What's up, Tom? It's not even that early. It's 8 o'clock and it is pitch dark. I think we're coming up on the longest day, or longest night of the year. Sorry.
Yeah, we're getting there. At first when I called you, I was like, man, is he 6 hours behind me, or what's going on?
Dude, it's especially dark today. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like Vancouver, I don't know if I've definitely never had someone from the podcast on Canada. I don't have any friends that live in Canada. So, like, tell me a little bit about Vancouver. Like, I imagine there's got to be some sort of a chip on your shoulder, right? Like working with all these Bay Area, Seattle people, Austin, Texas, and you're kind of like the sole representation that I see in the B2B sales community from Canada or from Vancouver specifically.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty great tech scene up in Canada. So it's certainly more than than me, but thank you for giving me the the title of the sole representation of Canada. I'll take it. Um,
It's like you and
man,
Toby from Shopify.
yeah, it's just us up here. That's it. I just I gotta yeah. Anyway, Vancouver's beautiful, man. I consider myself extremely lucky to have grown up here. If you ever have a chance to make your way up to Vancouver, I would highly, highly recommend it. Vancouver is, a really nice coastal town. We're over here on the west coast. We have a lot of kind of Chinese and Japanese influence, which makes our food scene really incredible. We have our mountains, Grouse Mountains, Seymour, Whistler. I can be up snowboarding on 3 different mountains within 20 minutes to an hour. And then
Mhm.
I can also be at beaches within 10 minutes. We have 3 beautiful beaches right outside of downtown Vancouver. Um, it is an expensive city, so that's why it's similar to SF in that way. Um, you kind of pay for the beauty, but it's a great place to live. There's certainly a tech scene that's growing very rapidly. Slack actually started in Vancouver. That's a little known fact.
Mm.
Hootsuite started up here. Um, so Amazon's got a headquarters coming in here. So it's growing and it's exciting, and yeah, it's a fun place to be.
That's awesome, man. Well, it's been on my list for a while. Haven't been able to obviously make it up this year, but at some point in the future, for sure. I want to get into your career because I've done my due bit of research on you, and heard you tell your story a little bit, and maybe we can elaborate on that for the audience that maybe just sees you on LinkedIn or knows you from Sales Hacker or Outreach or the number of different places that you kind of partake in. But you know,
Hmm.
from hearing your story, right, it sounds like you got into sales early at like 18 or coming straight out of high school, and it
Yeah.
seems like you had the kind of the dream of what an 18-year-old person might want coming at that age, right? You're like starting to you have this job selling things door to door. I think like golf and spa packages, which is
You're right.
probably a
You've done your
insanely
homework. I
yeah,
love
man.
it.
I'm here. I'm here for it. So
Nice.
it's an insanely hard job. It seems like, right? And
Yeah.
you're crushing it, and you're making probably
Mhm.
a lot of money. And
Mhm.
they fly you to Sydney, and you're partying and like all this stuff. So you just walk me through a little bit about what that was like, because as an 18-year-old, I got money in my pocket. People think I'm kind of a big deal. I'm flying over to Sydney, where God knows what. I mean, that sounds like one of the best places in the world to be. Seems like you're living pretty high at that point.
Yeah. Um, I'm again, kudos doing your homework. It's fun to kind of relive some of this time period. Fun and like almost scary because you know how little you know and how much you think you know at that time uh, period. But yeah, I mean, so even taking a step back, I'll add a little bit more color that even makes it a little bit crazier of a situation. So in I was a big rugby player growing up. That was like my sport. I played rugby, football, soccer, but rugby was like my favorite. I got to play in the BC Summer Games up here and do some really cool things. And part of what I got to do is in my grade 12 year, I got to tour around Australia and New Zealand playing rugby. Um, and we got our ass kicked, of course. They're incredible over there. I think we won 1 out of like 7 games. Um, but it was always in my head after that trip. I was like, man, I got to find a way to go work, over in Australia or New Zealand, go play rugby. Like, I got to do that. And that's what makes it even stranger is then I basically over the summer of high school, I was planning to go to the University of Victoria was the plan after that. And I got this job over summer because I didn't want to do the classic, like, be a landscaper or like do, just like a labor job or
Hmm.
something. So I basically found like a Craigslist ad, like a Kijiji ad that was like, hey, you can make $400 a day or something, like kind of those
Yeah.
pretty scammy ads you see.
Hmm.
But I was a young kid. I was like, that sounds awesome. I want to do that. And got this role, got like very limited training, would basically just tail this person, knocking on doors and going into malls and all this stuff, just selling these golf and spa packages. And as you alluded to, I did fairly well, quite quickly, just mirroring what I saw, I guess. And yeah, I was given the chance to go and help open up an office. And I say Sydney, Australia. If anyone's actually familiar with Sydney, this is going to be a funny part of the story too. I actually lived in a suburb of Sydney called Parramatta, which, if you know Sydney, it's a very rough part of town. Again, me being 18, I had no idea. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was just happy to be over there. But I do remember like Friday, Saturday night being like, wow, there's a lot of fights here. But anyway, long story short, it was a lot of learnings. I made just about every mistake that an 18-year-old can make. There was another factor there, where I acted when I was young.
Mm.
I did a lot of commercials. I did about 15 commercials in the 90s for like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Hot Wheels, Ring Pop. They're hilarious. I wish I could find all of them. I did a McDonald's one. I was just an extra in that one, but NSYNC and Britney Spears were on it. So little known fun fact. Um, and you get paid pretty well. It was held in trust for me, from my parents, and I was supposed to get it when I like graduated university. Well, when I was over in Australia, I decided that I wanted that money, or at least some of that money.
Yeah.
Got into a pretty big quarrel with my parents. They did end up basically saying, "You're an idiot. You're going to spend it all, but here you go. Go learn the lesson yourself. Right? Put your hand on the stove yourself." So bless them for letting me learn that way, because I think it's the only way I learned. Um, and so got even more money at a very young age, and proceeded to do exactly what they said I would do, and blow it on stupid things like, drinking and partying and eating at nice restaurants. So um, I would say the learning there, if I look back, is, yeah. I mean, when you're young, you think you have it all figured out.
Hmm.
Um, and when people give you advice, it's it's easy to think that, oh, they're old. That's not how the world works anymore. Yada yada yada. But there's so much truth in every advice, particularly from the people that love you the most in the world. So maybe take a second and heed some of the advice.
Yeah, totally. And I can relate to some parts of that story too. Like, I got started in sales from seeing a shiny flyer for Cutco knives in
Yeah,
college,
yeah.
and started doing that. And, I didn't get to the point of, going to Sydney or anything like that, but had some troubles myself with, partying too much and just, letting some of those things become distractions, and, had to kind of turn it around. And so, I know in your story, you ended up, coming back home, getting into bartending, kind of hit a little bit of a rock bottom point, then got back into sales. And but where I see, in your story, and I don't know you that well, but at least from where I'm looking, I feel like a huge turning point was starting at Sales Hacker. And
Mhm.
maybe or maybe not, but I remember when Max Altshuler put a post out looking for the head of partnerships, because I had just interviewed him for this podcast. This is a few years ago, and I thought he was really cool, and I thought what Sales Hacker was building was pretty cool. It's like, oh, that's interesting, and I think that was the job that you got, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken. Is that right?
That is right. Yeah, yeah. I uh, I was lucky enough, somehow I beat out 400 people for that role. So that was definitely a game changing role in my career. for me, when I look back at the pivotal moment, it's actually about 2.5 years before that.
Okay.
I look at so it like I guess it's all relative. Like looking back, that is the inflection point where things really started taking off. But for me mentally, when things changed and I was like, okay, it's game on, so to speak,
Hmm.
was when I actually made a jump into tech, which was about 5.5, 6 years ago now. I moved from like a GM sales manager position in the travel industry, actually. So similar inside sales, heavy calls, managing 14 people at a very young age, about 22. Again, thought I was had it all figured out, um, and then kind of had this realization that um, I couldn't go too much further in my industry, or I couldn't see people in the travel industry that were living the kind of life that I hope to live one day. I'm sure there are. I couldn't uh, find them, and I started looking more and more into tech. And at that time, the tech industry in Vancouver was starting to really kind of explode. And it looked like from my young, 22-year-old brain that that's where all the highest performers were going. That's what it looked
Hmm.
like. So I often draw the comparison of like, I don't know, it felt like I was playing like high school football. And like these people in tech were like in the NFL. That's kind of what it felt like. So I was like, hey, how do
Yeah.
I get in? How do I get into there? Um, and I remember it was so incredibly humbling. Again, I had a lot of pitfalls, but I did have a lot of success like early in my career too, when I really like focused on something. And I went and I thought I could get like a sales manager job. I was even going to for like sales director jobs at like 22 because I was managing all these people. I was like, what do you mean? We didn't have a CRM, we didn't have anything. So
Mm.
I was walking into these interviews, be like, who is this kid? This kid's got no degree. He like started a failed business. Like, what is going on? And so quickly got humbled very fast, and got a decent amount of no's. And then finally, this fintech company said, "Hey, like we have a BDR position open." It's like, what's a BDR? And they explained the premise to me, and I was like, "Well, how much would I make? Like, what's the career path?" And it was like literally a third of what I was making at the other role.
Hmm.
But I was like, I could do this and I could do this. I was like, wait, I don't have to close anything. Like, I just have to open business. That's all I have to do. They're like, yeah. And this other position, we were closing people on the phone in one call for like a substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, oh man, let's do it. So I did a lot of self-reflection. I was like, okay, let's do it. I had to get rid of my apartment. I slept on a friend's studio apartment couch for like 6 months as I was figuring it out because my salary was tiny. And that felt like the inflection point. And then from there on, my career, I just put my head down. I was like, okay, I'm going to try and be number one everywhere I'm at. I'm going to put in longer hours. I'm going to do all the right things. I'm going to start taking care of my body. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start meditating and like just do all the stuff that people tell you to do, read
Right.
the books. And it magically started working with a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work. So that feels like the inflection point. I became the number one BDR in like my first month there. And then that gave me an opportunity to go and take a team lead position at another company. And they let me build out the entire business development program from scratch, bring in the tech, hire the people, build the process, everything. And I relied super heavily on Sales Hacker to
Hmm.
do that because I was in over my head. I'd never done this. I'd never built out a tech program before. So I just consumed so much of Sales Hacker. And that's how I kind of started getting into the ecosystem,
Mm.
started sharing some of the stuff that I was learning on LinkedIn. Ended up jumping on a Sales Hacker webinar as a guest to explain the program I had built because we were doing some cool things. that's how I met them, got into kind of Max's ecosystem, saw that post, threw my hat in the ring, and then you're right, it was a pretty incredible catalyst for my career.
And do you remember how you got that job? You said that there was what, 400 other applicants, and
Yeah.
I imagine that there was some sort of creativity involved. It wasn't just like, hey, I'm Scott, and hire me. So do you
Yeah.
remember how it is you got it?
Yeah. So it was, I went, looking back, I kind of went crazy, I think. I went so singularly focused. I remember I was in, I was in Cleveland. At a conference that my company at the time had sent me to, and we were doing the conference floor thing, and how exhausting conferences are. Like,
Hmm.
you're at the booth for like 8-9 hours, and then you got to go to some dinner, and then you got to go to a party or whatever, and it's pretty exhausting. And on the second day, I saw this posting, and we're back at the hotel, and I was like, I don't know what it was. I was like, this is the role. This is my next move. And I was very happy at this company. I was going to be on path to director that year. We're building the team, but I was like, this is the move. This is going to help me meet all the people I want to meet, give me a ton of visibility, and like fast forward my career if I put in the work and do well. So I hit up Max on literally every social channel that he has, including Instagram. I think Instagram, after the second message, he got back to me. I started pinging every person that worked at Sales Hacker at the time, literally everyone. Got Gaetano's attention, who was the VP of marketing at that time.
Hmm.
I asked him to jump on a call. He obliged, which was super nice, just to try and get more feedback on the role and understand how I could position myself in the interview. We had the first interview. I made a video for Max after, sent it out to him. He's told me after, he was with his now wife at the time, who like saw the video, so she kind of became on my side, because she was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool, the only one who did that. So thank you, Ashley.
Shout out to Ashley.
Shout out to Ashley. And then there was an assignment, which was just like a series of questions, and I basically wrote essays to all of them, really going deep, super deep. Put a really big investment into that assignment, and didn't take it lightly. So I got to the next stage, which was another interview. Did well on that. Was told, okay, it's down to you and 3 other people. Found out later they were like, pretty top AEs at some really well-known tech companies.
Hmm.
And here I am, just some young kid from Vancouver, at a small tech company, and I could almost feel that in like the universe. I knew I was like, oh, I'm almost there, but I gotta do something else,
Yep.
because I could feel I was losing it. And now I'm good friends with Max and Gaetano, so I know kind of the whole story. And Max was leaning towards the other person. Gaetano was on my side at this point. And so what I did is I actually hired a design agency to help me build out a mock Sales Hacker webinar. So I knew they were known for their webinars. I'd been on one,
Yeah.
a mock Sales Hacker webinar of why you should hire, why I'm the perfect hire for the job. And I contacted 5 of my past bosses and got them all to do quotes in the mock webinar. I've actually shared it on LinkedIn before, but I sent that, and I think that was probably the clincher. Again, it was still super close with another candidate. So even with all that, I almost lost it.
I gotta say, people, it's when you're listening to this, it's kicking off 2021. You might be looking for a new job. Maybe last year, kind of bitching the ass in one way or another. You're looking for a career change. There's people out there that are just sending resumes blind through LinkedIn or through a company website. That is if that's a 0 and what you did is a 10, like we got to get people to a 7 at least. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to build out a fake webinar for every single company. If you know that's your dream job and you want to break through, you can. But this is the competition, people. It's people like Scott that, when there's hundreds of applicants for a certain company or a certain role, one person or a handful of people stand out for that final evaluation. So I think that's just a great lesson, a great reminder for people that are going for the new job, that you got to show that level of passion, that level of being able to go over the top in a way to show how much
Mhm.
you want it and to show what type of, creativity and effort that you'll actually put into the job.
Yeah, totally. And you said something there that I kind of want to underscore for those people who are
Mhm.
looking for a new job. And I know that getting a new job is a bit of a numbers game. But my advice would truly be, don't look for a job, look for the job, and
Mm.
go all in on that job. And again, talking to Max after the fact, years later, I'd be like, hey, what was really the clincher? And that was what he said. He said it was the passion, and you wanted this job and no other job, right? Because that was true. I didn't have any other feelers out there. I was like, I'm staying where I'm at if I don't get this job. I want to work for you. I want to work for Sales Hacker, and that's that. And that kind of singular focus and passion is what companies really, really want to see. So it's okay to apply at multiple companies, but I would say maybe space it out and go all in on one. Burn the bridges behind you, so to speak, just like, or burn the boats behind you, not bridges, never burn bridges, but
Yeah, yeah, I
wrong
got you.
analogy.
Yeah.
um, but just go all in, and that singular focus will take you far.
And I've heard you say a number of times that, one of the things that you really hang your hat on for your career looking back, and a big emphasis that you put on, is having mentors that bet big on you, right? So you showed two examples of that. You showed five
Mhm,
different people that you worked for, right, that
mhm,
were took the time to vouch for you and, give a
mhm.
quote, right? And then, the second piece is, Max and Gaetano that bet big on you, right? And
Mhm.
that's, it's not like you wanted that job and then you stayed there for a month and you're like, oh shit, this is really hard. Actually, maybe I don't want to do it, right? They've continued to invest in you. The people at Sales Hacker, at Outreach, et cetera, have
Mhm.
continued to invest in you and help you grow and develop. So I think it's
Yep.
picking who those people are, and you're betting big on them, and then they bet
Yep.
big on you and kind of catapult your success.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I shared kind of five things that I thought
Mhm.
accelerated my career on LinkedIn, and one of those um, was that, find mentors that are willing to bet big on you, and then the key point, which is what I spend an absurd amount of time thinking about and doing, is all of these people that have bet on me, and I've been extremely lucky that many have. I think almost constantly, how can I help? How can I drive value Max's way? How can I drive value Dave Kennett's way? How can I drive value Chris Donato's way? How can I drive value Sam Jacobs' way? How can I, all these people, how do I drive value back to them? Um, and I think those are the strongest kind of mentor relationships when it goes both ways. There are certain things
Mm.
that we can teach each other, no matter how junior you are in your career. Where a lot of us are a new generation, where we have different skill sets, we think differently, we look at problems differently, and that is extremely valuable. So don't think of it as a one-way street. Next time you meet with your mentor, come with something to teach them.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. And, I want to put some kudos to you, because I saw that post and that was one of my favorite posts of yours, kind of the five things that you've learned, or, I guess reasons why you've become more successful and put you on this path. And, one of the things that I've been really inspired by your path, and just really watching you from afar the last few years and getting to know you more so the last few months, is combining, I'm a big believer in compound interest. Let's take a step back, right? Like
Mhm.
financially, right? You invest and it just keeps growing and multiplying, right? You work out 20 minutes a day, that adds up over time. And so you're doing that with your network, right? You're doing that professionally with the things that you're writing for your for the newsletter, for the podcast that you do, for who you sell to with Sales Hacker and
Mhm.
with Outreach, and then the webinars, everything that you're doing, it's all to that really focused community. And I've got to tell you, this is this will the episode will be coming out a month after we're talking
Mhm.
about this, but I've actually made a career change, kind of following that model, right? And I've had that in my
Incredible.
head, like, oh, that would be smart. And
Mhm.
I'm going over to Gong, and trying to focus. I've
Congrats,
been doing
man.
it. Thank you.
Congrats.
I
That's
just
awesome. That's
I
it.
just
Gong is
I
a
just
very great, incredible company doing cool
yeah, well,
things.
I just put my 2 weeks yesterday, so I feel comfortable enough to share it, and this will come out a little after. So
Yeah.
but to the thought of hey, I've been putting years into this podcast and sales, and I'm selling to these other people. It's like, let's diverge those paths. So I'd love to hear you comment on that, not about me, but just about
Mhm.
the value of that compound interest, where you are able to add value to all these different people in so many different ways.
Yeah. Absolutely. First off, congratulations again.
Thank you.
That's a huge step, and I think a really smart step. So I'll share the five things. I'll go a little bit deeper on them. So,
Yep.
and they all complement each other. So number one, um, go deep and wide. And what I mean by that is deep into one industry and wide in terms of skill set. Again, this is about building compound interest. If you can do this from the jump, like from your first job, and you magically find the industry that you like the most and stay there, within 5 years, you're going to have an absolutely incredible network. So for me, I've kind of latched on to sales and MarTech, and I will probably spend the majority, if not my whole career, in that little area of tech. Pick your
Yep.
area of tech. It doesn't have to be that. If you know AI interests you, whatever it is, fintech, whatever. Pick it. Stay in that industry, and then if you feel like, hey, I'm getting bored, learn a new skill. Don't jump into a different industry. Learn a new skill.
Mm.
And with that, it goes the second one, which is make sure within that industry you are also selling or marketing to the same persona. So you're not jumping from selling into HR to selling into salespeople or selling to CFOs, and then you're selling to BD managers or something. So seller market to the same persona. Again, not only your network in your industry goes up, but your buyers, your prospects, they can be return customers everywhere you go. Um, next piece is build a hyper specific following through content. You're great at this. Um, Media gives you leverage, and it gives you control of your career. Um, I'm lucky enough to consult and advise for some really cool companies, and it's not, I've got some interesting ideas and strategies and tactics, but I'm I know that the reason a lot of those exists is for access to my network, which I built through media.
Hmm.
So that's how it gives you leverage. We talked about finding mentors that are willing to bet big on you, find ways to add value back. You can do that through the network. Again, it's all kind of a flywheel. And then the last piece, it all falls down if you don't do this. Jump before you feel ready, and then you got to jump again, and you just never stop jumping, and keep pushing, um, because everyone is building the plane as it flies. Every single person. There's not one person I know, even the most deep technical experts on a subject, um, who aren't just figuring it out as they go. So that is kind of my advice, and a few things that have really helped me. Of course, I can only see them when I have the luxury of looking backwards. It wasn't all planned out. I didn't have this grand plan, but I hope that's valuable for some.
People should be rewinding, about 90 seconds back or 2 minutes back when you started that rant, because that's just hard-earned career advice for anyone that is interested in. I imagine that if you tuned in to listen to Scott Barker, something that you're interested in is around, the sales or martech community. Maybe it's about building a brand, maybe it's about building a great network, some of these things that you're great at doing. And that's the game plan for it, that's the blueprint. So find, I know, I'm starting to see now that that kind of model is in my head. I see some of my friends that are like, in more interested in venture capital or something else, and I see them kind of take their job and they have this side thing that complements them. Like, oh, they're playing that same game. That's
Mhm.
interesting. And so I think that's a great strategy. And I'd love to learn more about how you filter the things that you're learning, right? Because every day, between everything you do with Sales Hacker and outreach and social media and networking, you're getting constant influx of ideas, ways that people are doing things, tactics about the future of sales and marketing. So, how do you filter out the good ideas from all the rest?
That's a great question, man. Um, and one I think about almost like unconsciously a lot. Like
You know,
I don't sit down and I don't have a mental model or a framework for doing this. I think part of it is a learned skill, right? That you pick up in in selling, right? Like I sold for so long that it's kind of like being able to hear what the real objection is, or like what they're really asking. And so I think it comes down to really active listening. And when you're hyper focused and you're active listening, that's like you're taking what people are saying and you're trying to apply it to your role like almost immediately, and then you can kind of see it break down if it's not valuable, right? You're like, oh well, now that I could see this would happen and this would happen and this would happen, and then when it kind of does stand that test, that's when I'll double down on it. And for me, what I'll do, I guess I do have a bit of a model. What I do is when I find something that I'm like, that's new, that's unique, I think that's going to change the game. I will write about it, and if it stands up to that test and it still makes sense to me after I write about it and apply it to kind of my scenario, um, which not all do. So a lot of them I'll scrap and be like, I don't think that's something that personally I want to follow. So yeah, I guess writing is for me. I've got my newsletter, The Forecast, and that's what I try and write about is the future best practices in our industry. And a lot of those come from the information that I'm able to gain from private conversations, from webinars, from podcasts, from LinkedIn, from all these sorts of people, and and then I start writing about it. And if it still makes sense after a writer like myself gets done with it, then then maybe there's something there.
Yeah, you brought up the forecast, and you kind of beat me to the punch. I love the newsletter. I love
Thanks,
that it
man.
comes out on Friday, and there's a handful of newsletters that I read, just in general. Yours is probably the one that I go to most for sales. I like Tim Ferriss's, I like Farnham Street.
Mhm.
I like yours. Maybe there's a few others that I'll check out. But I really like how succinct it is. I like how action oriented it is. There's different types of content, and I love your obsession with Naval. So
So
you know,
obsessed. Dude, I'm borderline like embarrassed now to put more Naval into my newsletter. I've got to like, I don't know, send him a bottle of wine or something. But yeah, he's had a big impact on my life. I learned about Naval only like 2 years ago, and I'm just kind of obsessed. I like the way he views the world.
I have a buddy that's also in sales and also loves Naval, and he ran into him once at like a yoga class in San Francisco, and like
Really?
started
Of course
talking
he
to
did.
him. Yeah, started talking to him, and I think he got his email and he responded once or twice, and was trying to build that up, and it kind of faded out. But he's kind of like just popped up as this. I mean, he's been around for a while, but
Yeah,
probably with the popularity of the Joe Rogan podcast and everything, he's become
yeah.
super popular. But do you have any sayings from him, teachings from him that stand out to you as being particularly impactful for you?
Oh man. there is, and if that situation happened to me, I saw him in the yoga class, that would probably be like the one quote unquote celebrity that I would like actually be almost like speechless. What are my favorite Naval quotes? I mean, a lot of this, some of the ideas I just shared are rooted in some of Naval's thinking of like how you can use either code or media um, to give you leverage. Like that's how you get leverage in this world that we live in. And I think that seed was planted from Naval. I also like, and I'm going to bastardize some of his quotes. They won't be exact, but you'll get the premise. Is he's got one about, you know, a lot of people who are quote unquote uh, intellectuals or smart or whatever can sometimes be almost like cynics, right? They're like, once you're well read enough, you're like, the world's not that great of a place, and
Yeah.
you know, being positive is almost seen as like, well, you must be naive. And I love that Naval's kind of take on that is if you're so smart, why can't you figure out how to be happy? You know, and he puts
Mm.
happiness before everything. And that's really the end goal, and everything else, wealth creation, um, is secondary to being happy. So if we spent as much time trying to figure out what makes us happy as we do trying to make money, like that's what we all do, we trade time for money, we would be much better off. So those are a few of the things, and I could probably go on and on. But I just yeah, if you haven't checked him out, Naval Ravikant on Twitter at Naval. Um, yeah, check it out.
Yeah, I think that's
What's your favorite? Are you a Naval fan?
I am. Yeah, probably not to your extent, but my favorite, and one that I just can't get out of my head from a year ago when I heard it, is play long-term games with long-term people.
Yeah,
And I
man,
thought
love
that
that
was
one.
the coolest one, because when
I've
you're
got an
young,
Instagram photo with that I stole that caption and put it
oh,
on
nice.
there.
I love it. I mean, because when you're young, and we're probably close to or the same age, like it's easy to think that you're in a short-term kind of sprint.
Yeah.
But when I talk to people that are older, obviously you can do the math. I mean, your career can be 4, 5, 6 decades, depending on how long you work and live and all that stuff. So don't just play for your quota this quarter or this month or this job that's going to get you a 5K raise, that you
Hmm.
overlook everything else about it, right? It's like, find the people that you really believe in, that you think are great, that you think are smart, that you think have integrity, and play the long-term games with them. It's like exactly what you're talking about with the add value to, how do I add value to Max and Sam Jacobs and all these other people? And, playing a long-term game with all those folks, versus a short-term game where you're just trying to win, or you're trying to
Hmm.
extract and suck as much value from people as you can, right? So it's kind of just that mentality of, I think, being a giver and trying to be patient, even though that's something that I'm not naturally very good at.
I feel that. I'm glad you brought that one up. I love that quote too. There's another one I'll share is escape competition through authenticity.
Mm,
And I love that. I love this one. And basically the premise is, you know, find out what you know how to do better than anybody else, because you love to do it. It's naturally you. Like you love to do it. And your work starts to feel like play. And in that environment, no one can compete with you because you're not working. No one can outwork you because you're not working. It feels like play. You're just playing all day.
mm.
Um, and so you don't have any competition. And I think that's what we're seeing with people's like, brands and all this stuff. You know, you can't replace a Morgan Ingram. You can't teach that. So anything that you can't teach can't be replaced. Which I think is super interesting.
And you think about kind of the future of where sales is going a lot, I
Hmm.
take it. And so I think that segues well. Like, is that, I'm thinking it's easy to probably think about, a robot's going to take over, or what's sales going to be like in 10 years, or whatever, questions people might have or fears they might have. But I would beg to, make the case that those things that only you can do is really what you should focus on, right? Those skills that you can build, the value that you can bring. Like you said,
Hmm.
like if you, tune in, and shout out to Morgan, like if you tune into something that he's doing, like the creativity, the passion, the authenticity, people can't replicate that. That's just him, right? And I think you have the same way about you. So is there anything else maybe outside of that that you have your antennas up about the future of sales?
Yeah, definitely. And now you've got me on this Naval track, dude. That was a dangerous door to open. So
I couldn't
from
bring it
here
up at
on,
the beginning, or else we wouldn't get
I
any.
yeah, here from here on, I only speak through Naval quotes. And so he's got another one that talks about creativity is the last frontier. So if you
Mm,
fast forward, long enough, yeah, everything will be automated. We'll have software to do, just about everything, and creativity will be the last frontier, and we'll all just be sitting here with hyper creative jobs, which is the way it should be. That's what humans like to do, and so I would start investing in that now, whether it's through just consumption of other people's creativity, because the output matches the input. So you have to be uh, ingesting a lot of content from multiple sources. Don't just stay in like sales world. Like read about history, read about all these different mental models, and then that's going to help spur your creativity. If there's anyone listening saying, "Oh, I'm just not creative," you got to get that thought out of your
mm.
head. We're all unbelievably creative individuals. Just find what makes you feel alive. It could be creativity in your video game strategy. It could be your taste in music. It could be making videos. It could be making podcasts. It could be writing lines of code. It could be anything. There's so many beautiful creative things that we can do. You just have to find the one that makes you feel alive.
And that probably stands out. Like if I think about the future of sales, and outreach is done, in just the sales engagement space, we'll say, has done such an amazing job in terms of helping to scale the process of sales. But
Hmm.
I think that's a great example of, well, if you just kind of like, if you're someone that's just like at a factory pressing a button, and you just press send, send, send on the sequence all day long, it doesn't matter what platform you have. You're not maxing out your potential that way. Like you could get
Totally.
creative within the emails you're sending people, or the videos you send people, or what you say on a cold call, or a discovery call, or how you're building out your proposals, all the different aspects of like being an actual salesperson. you know
Hmm.
the creativity can lie surely in painting something, or cooking, or anything, kind of in that realm, but it can relate to your job too. And so I think that's
Totally.
where you're getting at. But I think that's a huge
Yeah.
piece of leveraging this great sales technology that we have now, is also using it creatively, and not just sticking to the box, or thinking that because you have a certain tool stack, or you're selling this great product or whatever, that it's just going to line up and you're going to smash your quota every year.
Couldn't agree more. I think if I look back at my my career, that was one of the main things that made me successful. Like I could so many examples throughout my career where I just didn't take things at face value, and I tried different things. Like I'll go back to the first door knocking job. The reason I was so successful wasn't because I was the best salesperson. The reason I got to number one was because I started going into uh, office building, basically breaking into office buildings, because I was like, hey, I noticed that the most of the people who bought these things were like white collar professionals. They'd like answer the door. They'd be like a suit on, maybe like going out the door. So it's like, where do those people live? Oh, okay, they live in office buildings. So I'd go in office buildings, and then I got a chance to pitch, 40 people at once instead of one to one. So that's why I did well at that. The reason I did well at the um, first fintech job I got in tech wasn't because I was the best BDR. There's people that were better than me, but we were given lists to call, and we make like 150 calls a day. But I just took a step back and was like, oh, who needs service? It was merchant services, so payment processing. Who needs that?
Hmm.
Oh, new businesses do. So I Googled new business listing and found my own list that had a way better hit rate. 1 in 4
Yeah.
people would be like, oh yeah, I'm literally thinking about this right now, instead of calling dentists in the middle of their day or whatever. Same thing at Media Valet, right? We brought in a bunch of new technology. We started doing videos like 4 years ago when no one was doing videos, and that helped us book a ton of meetings, made my team, do really well. And just constant examples of just not taking anything at face value, right? Like this, whatever you're told was just someone else's opinion on how things should be done. Respect it, learn that process in and out, and then see if you can make it better.
I think that's amazing. I think that is a great place for us to kind of wrap this puppy up. And for anyone that wants to learn from you, connect with you, first and foremost, before I'll let you kind of, share wherever you want folks to follow you. You should absolutely be checking out the newsletter. You should absolutely subscribe to the Sales Engagement podcast. That's dropping, quick 30-minute-ish episodes that are very tactical and strategic that will help you become a better salesperson. Follow Scott on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. And, I think particularly LinkedIn, for that sales content to become a better professional. I don't think I missed anything, but where else can people find you, or any last words for, the millennial salespeople out there?
No, that was great, man. Thank you so much for having me. That was certainly a lot of fun. And yeah, check out the forecast. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Scott Barker. And last words. I mean, keep learning. You're doing it right now, listening to this podcast. Don't get complacent. Keep learning, and life gets really fun.
Awesome, man. It was a blast having you on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
See ya. Thank you so much for checking out that podcast. I hope you saw value, whether you're, working out right now or doing the dishes or, laying around the couch, whatever you're doing right now while you're listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some value. If you did, the only thing that you can do to really help me out is to share this podcast with a friend, share it on social media, and please subscribe wherever you're listening, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is, and leave a review on Apple if that's where you're listening. That's what helps us to spread reach, helps us to get better guests, like the one that you heard just now, and to give you as much value as possible. So connect with me, LinkedIn, Tom Alemo, Instagram, Twitter, Tommy Tahoe, and subscribe, leave a review, and make it a great day. Peace. Thank you so much.